Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Hormonal Mama podcast. I am your host, Kara Drescher, and today on the show, I have the incredible, the amazing Haley O'Neill, owner and founder of MindBar. Now, MindBar, we're going to talk all about it in this episode, but to give you a quick little hint, MindBar is a brand new mental health app. You can think of MindBar like Netflix, but for mental health. So instead of searching for your favorite movie or TV show, you're going to search for your favorite masterclass taught by a coach or a therapist, someone specializing in a mental health concern that you may be worried about. This is, in my opinion, one of the best episodes I've ever done with one of the most incredible women that I've ever had the absolute honor of working with. So you will want to stay tuned and listen to this one. I'll see you in a minute. Hi, Haley. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to have you here with me today and to talk about MindBar. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be on your podcast. I'm such a big fan.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm a huge fan of yours, as you know, because we have been doing some work together the past few months. And man, I still can't believe what an incredible new app this is. Like the whole concept behind MindBar is kind of, what's the right word? I want to say mind-boggling, and that's not quite what I mean. I think what's mind-boggling to me is like you came up with this idea and you were like, this is a brilliant idea and I'm going to make it happen. And you did. And now it's here. And it's like, oh my God, there are things in life I get excited about. And then there are things that I get so excited about that I can't stop talking about them. And people like my husband are like, it's great. Take a breath, calm down. And this is one of those things because I think that it's so unique and so special. And so, I think it has the potential to change the world, really. I mean, honestly. And so let's talk about it. Tell me, I know, but I want to hear from you how you describe what is MindBar? How does it work? What is it? Let's start there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for all those kind words. I'm so excited about it and can't believe it's finally out there in the world. But yeah, I describe MindBar like a masterclass for mental health, or maybe even like a Netflix for mental health. There's these platforms that we are all really comfortable with that are very intuitive, and I'm creating that same kind of thing for therapy and for coaching. And so, I think that with everybody, with our busy lives and the high cost and inaccessibility of therapy as it stands now in coaching, it can be really difficult for people to kind of get started in that world. But I know from my experience that the tools and the benefits of therapy and coaching are just completely life-changing. And it took me, up until my late 20s to even start experimenting in that world because there was kind of a stigma. It was so expensive. I didn't even know where to get started. But when I did, it just completely changed my life. And so I became obsessed with this idea of like, if everybody went to therapy or had a coach or whatever, like the world would just be better.
Yes, I agree.
And so that's when I got really, really adamant about like, look at all these new platforms coming up like Netflix and Spotify and Masterclass and these things that people can do on their own time, on their own schedule that are affordable. I want to create something like that for therapy and for mental health. And so I kind of, one day was just out on a walk listening to a Dr. Phil podcast because I'm a big fan. And I remember just having a moment of clarity. Like I love this idea and I can't stop thinking about it. And if I don't start doing it, like if I don't actually start doing something about it, I'm always going to wonder what if.
Yes.
So that was kind of how MindBar came about.
Oh, that's so cool. And I love the way you just described that it was like that moment where you're like, I got to do this. It's like when you feel so passionately about something and like it's not, I have so many thoughts in my head. It's I feel like it's multiple parts, it's, this is such a good idea. And it's so, as a person who is creative and gets ideas in my head, I know how it can be to just like sit with an idea and it just keeps coming back and keeps coming back and keeps coming back. And it's that moment when you're like, I got to do this because this is a great idea. And that can be really hard to believe enough in yourself and your ideas to say, damn it, this is a good idea and I need to do it. And you did that. And that's so incredible because so often we just sort of let our ideas go over. And I'm like, well, what? I think it's a good idea. What if other people don't think it's a good idea? And it's so easy
Yeah.
to kind of get trapped in that. But I think it's so incredible that you knew, no, this is a good idea and I need to put this out into the world.
Hmm.
And you did. I mean,
Yeah.
like, that's
And
incredible.
even if like, because for me, it's like I can know I have a good idea, but then I start to wonder all the logistics. Like, well,
Hmm.
how do you set that up, and how do I do this, and how do I do that? I didn't go to business school. I'm not a therapist. I don't,
Right.
I'm not going to be the person to figure this out, or whatever. And I have so many ideas that pop through my head all the time.
Hmm.
10 a day, and I'm like, oh, I don't
Right.
know how to like manufacture a product. I'm just not going to do that. And so to me, it was almost like, again, like I could go down this road and realize like, oh wow, I really, this was not right, or I don't know how to do this, but I can at least start. I can at least try. Like that was kind of the shift for me of like, if I don't even get started, I'm gonna regret that, And if
Yes.
I get started and I realize in a year or two, okay, like this is a big hurdle that I can't get past, then I can be like, okay, I tried, which is great. Like that's so powerful to try something and give it your all. But then, it's kind of funny, like once you do just get started, it starts to make sense. Like the things that you thought before were like, oh no, 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 I don't even know how to do that, or I can't even start that. It starts to just you start to figure it out when you just
Yes.
take that first step.
Totally. And you're absolutely right there. It's about taking that first step. It's about
Mhm.
having the confidence to get over the hurdles. And sometimes it's as simple as, yes, I know this is going to be hard. I know it's going
Mhm.
to be hard, but I need to do it.
Mhm.
And I think that's really, really awesome and huge. I'm just so psyched. Oh my gosh. So, okay. So tell me how MindBar works because it's such a, I love the way that you described it. It's like Netflix, it's like Masterclass, Spotify, all of these great platforms, which are, these on demand streaming
Mhm.
platforms. And the really cool thing to me about MindBar is that it is, like you said, it's specifically about mental health. But what I think is even greater than that is you've broken it down into all of these categories and really organized it in a way where people can easily find what
Mhm.
they're looking for. So tell me how it works. Kind of walk me through what it looks like for a member, how, how
Yeah.
how it all works.
Yeah. So like I say, I'm very passionate about therapy and coaching and the tools and benefits of it. So I wanted to make MindBar affordable to everybody. I wanted to make it what you would pay for Netflix, or
Hmm.
something like that. And so basically, if a member wants to sign up, it's either $14.99 for a monthly membership, or $115 for the year. And so that's kind of step one, is just get signed up. But then once you're actually in the MindBar app, like you mentioned, there's 8 categories, ranging from like stress and anxiety and grief and trauma and pregnancy and postpartum, which are kind of like the hero of that category. I love it.
Yeah.
And then all the way to things like goal setting and manifestation, and like, health and body and all these different things. And so there's a wide range of, hey, I might be struggling with something and I need to kind of dive into that. Or like I might have these goals and I want to kind of make a roadmap and path to these goals. So when you're in the app, you can navigate through those categories. There's a lot. I've spent 2 years building MindBar, and so I found, what I believe to be the most amazing therapists and coaches that I've personally vetted. Um, and I can tell you also, I've watched every single class at least 3 times, and
Amazing.
they're amazing. Like I'm not, pregnant right now or going to be soon, but I've learned so much about pregnancy and postpartum and infertility, and like developing my relationship with my partner through those things by watching your classes. And I always joke that I'm becoming like the most emotionally intelligent person in the world. So like
But you are, which is
I,
amazing.
yeah. And so I truly believe if anybody can just kind of like has access to, because if you're working one on one with a therapist or coach, you might kind of focus on one thing. But with MindBar, you can maybe one day watch a class on relationships and communication, and the next day watch something on, how to like manage your nervous system or something.
Mhm.
So, anyways, I'm getting ahead of myself. So the way that we've created the classes is, let's say you were going to go to 10 sessions with a therapist or a coach. We're trying to create that same experience, but in kind of like a self paced, micro class way. So there might be a teacher who teaches a 2-hour class, but they're going to break it down kind of 10-minute, 15-minute chapters, so to speak, each one teaching you a different tool. So you might learn, in the communication class, like, what is my communication style? What does that mean? How do I communicate with somebody with that same one, with a different one? How do I, tell my partner about that this is my communication style, and let's practice it. It's really, really cool. We've created workbooks to go alongside it to practice it in your life and really bring it all home. And so that's kind of step one, is like going through and doing these classes. And funnily enough, I was actually, when I was vetting and interviewing coaches and therapists, I fell in love with everybody, but there was one coach that really met me where I was at. She's a female founders coach. And I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I want to work with her. So I actually hired her as my personal coach.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, and that was how the kind of next, MindBar thing came about was, hey, when I started going to therapy back in the day, Googling people, going to see a million people in person, I was spending 150 an hour trying to find the right fit for me. And when I did, it was amazing, but it was a frustrating process. And
Oh yeah.
so with MindBar now, if you are a member and you're watching classes and you're, on the app, that's great. But also, if you are like, hey, I love Kara, I am, dealing with this or that, I want to work with her, they will be able to basically work with you. I mean,
Mhm.
unlike a Netflix or a masterclass, like, they can connect with you and work with you, whether it's in like one of your workshops or groups or a one-on-one session. Like, they have that access to you because our teachers are all wanting to engage with the community.
Mhm.
So that's something that I think really sets it apart and makes it really special, is like the connection and the community and interactivity. It's not just necessarily watching it. It's really engaging after the fact if you'd like to.
I love that. And I think, like you just said, that's what really, how can I word it? I want to say that's what really sets you up. The whole thing sets you apart. It makes you so unique. But the fact that you give people the opportunity to connect with the person that they're taking, one of these master classes from. And let's use me for an example, because I have 3 classes on MindBar. Yay!
They're so
And
good. They're
someone
so
sees
good.
it. Just as a side note, did I have the time of my life creating these classes for MindBar? Yes, yes, I did. Thank you. I mean, I don't think I've ever been so honored in my life. It's
They're
so
so
exciting to be a
good.
part of it. But I think it's really, really great to give someone the opportunity to have all this exposure to all of these different coaches and therapists. Okay, let's say that someone went on the app and they were like, okay, so this is an issue, this is an issue, this is an issue. I'm going to take this class, and this class with 3 different coaches.
Mm.
And let's say they like all 3 and they're like, man, I want to work with each of them. Well, how
Mhm.
cool is it that you get the opportunity to connect with each of us and find
Mhm.
out, okay, are you a good fit for me? Are you a good fit for
Yeah.
me? Are you a good fit for me? Hey, you know what? You're all a good fit, or these 2 are good, or that one's a good fit, or whatever. And then that
Yeah.
way, people get an opportunity. Like you said, it is expensive, not just to get, mental health support, but
Mhm.
it's frustrating to do that. I mean, I know I've been there. I've been down that road of finding the right counselor, therapist, psychiatrist, you name it. And it's
Mhm.
hard. It is hard to find
Yeah.
the person, because it's not just about finding the person who can help you with the issue. You have to connect with
Mhm.
them. You have to be comfortable with
Yes.
them. That is
Yes.
key. And I think MindBar just gives so many opportunities, because it gives people the opportunity to get that support, but then to go deeper if they want to. And they've already
Mhm.
gotten kind of a taste of what it would be like to work with this coach or therapist. And now
Mhm.
here's the opportunity to really go deeper and find out, can we work together more? I mean, I just think that's
Yes.
something so, I'm going to use the word special. I use that so often. I can't help it. It's
It's a
like
good
my favorite
word.
word, but it is so special. There's nothing like this out there that I can find. And man, do I do the searching. I do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
I
me
have
too.
never
Me
found
too.
anything like this. And it's
Yeah.
just magical. Oh, that is a
Me
good
too.
word. That's what it is. It is magical.
Magical.
Absolutely. I
Oh,
would describe it that way.
thank you for
Everything is
saying
magic.
that.
I
Thank
just
you
think
for
it's
saying
awesome.
that.
Well,
Yeah, I
hey,
agree.
thank you for creating this magical thing. I mean, honestly, I just, I know I could sit here and stroke your ego all day, but I mean every single word I say, because I've worked with you. I'm a part of this amazing, I think, world changing app. And I mean that when I say that. I know that might sound, like an exaggeration, but I don't think it is. There's
Mm-mm.
nothing like it out there. And we're in a world now where communication is different than it used to be in a very good way. There's so much more opportunity to communicate and connect with people than when we were kids,
Mhm.
for example. When we were young,
Mhm.
like I was a child of the 80s and we didn't have the internet, we didn't have apps, we didn't have cell phones, let alone smartphones, like there was
Yeah.
no easy way to find help and support and guidance and all these things. And
Mhm.
now we're in a point in history and human history, we'll say, where all of these things are easier to access. And you've tapped
Mhm.
into this very, oh, very, I'm going to use the word unique. I can't think of a better word at the moment. Unique way of getting that out there. I don't know if I worded that
Mhm.
in a way that makes any sense to anybody, but you know what I'm saying. I hope.
I
I
do.
hope.
Oh, I
I
do.
did I did
Absolutely.
want to ask you something because I really love that you named it MindBar. Like to me, the way that I was always describing it to people, because I'd be like, you guys, and call my friends or to tell my family, I'm so excited. I'm going to be doing this work with this amazing new app. And I would say, it's called MindBar. And they'd look at me and be like, that sounds interesting. What is that? And I kept describing it as like going to a bar, except instead of going to a bar and getting drinks, you're going to a bar for the mind and you're,
Mhm.
pulling out a class here and a class here that you want to take instead of taking drinks. Now, I don't know if that's how
Yeah.
you would describe it or if that's kind of what your reasoning was behind it, but that's kind of how I always describe it to people because that's what it feels like for me. But tell
Yeah.
me how you came up with the name MindBar because I think that's so cool. I told someone who's a fellow coach. She's a coach and she's a licensed counselor. And I mentioned to her MindBar and she was like, "Hello, let's talk more about this." What now? And I was explaining it to her. She's like, "What a great name." And I couldn't get over it either. I said, "I know, right? How brilliant is that?"
Yay.
So tell me a little bit about where that name came from because I think that's super creative.
Yeah, gosh, when the weather's nice in Texas, I like to go on walks. And I remember I went on so many walks where I was just throwing around a million ideas in my head for
Mhm.
names, like this, that, this, that. And then all of a sudden, I don't know where it came from, but Mind Bar just came up after probably like my seventh walk. And I remember just being like, oh my God, I love it.
Yes.
And I think for me, it just kind of came up naturally. But when I thought about it, I thought the same exact thing that you did of like almost being at like a salad bar or a bar and you're kind of making your plate. You're kind of making
Yes.
your cocktail or whatever. Like, maybe I do want a little bit of mix of like healing from some past trauma, but also finding my dream career. Like maybe I
Yes.
need a kind of mix of things, or maybe I'm struggling, in like my sexual intimacy with my partner, and I want to work with Lindsay, the sex therapist, or whatever. It's like
Right.
you're kind of at like this salad bar almost, or like a
Mhm.
cocktail bar. And so that's kind of how the name initially came about, and I love it. And then, the more that we kind of started to think about it, we were like, oh, we're also really raising the bar on mental health. Like
Mm.
we're going to try to revolutionize the way that this is being done. And so that's kind of become our tagline of like raising the bar on mental health. So it's kind of a combination of those two things.
Love that. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that is so brilliant. See, that just shows me how brilliant your mind is. 100%. Keep hitting things with
Well,
my
I have to
elbow.
give I have to give credit where credit's due. When I first started Mind Bar, we talked about kind of like having an idea and then you're like, okay, how do I execute it? What do I do? So my therapist, and I hadn't been seeing her for a couple years at this point, but my therapist I initially had just like changed my life. I love her. All my friends started going to her. We all started our sentences with like, oh, Barbara taught me this, Barbara taught me this tool. And so when I came up with this idea, I naturally reached out to her and was like, I want to run this by you, get your feedback. And we actually ended up co-founding it together.
Mhm.
And so like me and, my old therapist, I say old therapist, my previous therapist,
Mhm. She's
um,
so old.
yeah, she's not old. And so anyway, I have to give credit where credit's due because she's the one that when she heard the name was like, oh, I was thinking like, that we're raising the bar on mental health. And I was like, whoa, like I
So
never
cool.
would have thought about that.
I love it. I think it's really cool that you have these like it's dual purpose, if you will. And it
Yeah.
really is. And it's really neat because that's exactly what you're doing. That's exactly what you're doing because nobody is doing that. Nobody is
Mhm.
trying to raise the bar. We have all these incredible coaches and therapists, and I am the biggest advocate of mental health support that there is.
Mhm.
I think, there is this huge stigma surrounding it still, not as much as there used to be, but there still is. And there just shouldn't be. But
No.
that's what's so cool is you're raising the bar in multiple ways. You're raising the bar and making it more affordable. You're raising the bar and making it more accessible. You're raising the
Mhm.
bar and taking that stigma away by making it fun. You're making it
Mhm.
an opportunity for people to learn about themselves, because ultimately that to me is how I see therapy and coaching. It's learning about yourself so you can live the best life you can live. We're here
Yeah,
for, a finite amount of time. And why not get the help, the tools, the support that you need to
I
live your
know.
life the best way you can?
I know. I always tell people, like, if I'm trying to kind of introduce people to therapy who've had a stigma around it, I'm like, what if you were gonna, compete in a basketball tournament or,
Mhm.
the ski Olympics? Would you not want to get a coach to help you? And they're
Right.
like, well, of course. And I'm like, yeah, you're trying to live your life, you're trying to reach these goals. Why? It's just it's I try really hard to work on this stigma that people have. I'll be telling people all the time, oh, I can't make this meeting or I can't make this appointment. I have couples therapy with my husband. And people will be like, didn't you like just get married? And I'm like, yeah.
So
So
what?
you know what
Right.
I mean? Like I'm trying really hard to,
Exactly.
to like break the stigma. I tell everybody, I'm like, I go to therapy, I go to therapy, I go to therapy, I go to a lot of
Right.
therapy. I'm like, how can we all help like make this so normalized?
It's so interesting to me. This is just sort of a side note because that is such an issue in our society, and this is a worldwide issue. I mean, I think it's a huge issue here in the United States. And this is going to sound however it sounds. I blame a lot of it, the stigma, on movies and TV, and I say that for a very specific reason. So many years ago in a past life, I worked for a research foundation, and we studied and specialized in schizophrenia. And it was a fascinating job. I worked there for 3 years. I was a research study coordinator, I was an administrator, and my job was to work one on one with the CEO of the foundation, who was a neuroscientist and psychologist, and work with our patients who all
Hmm.
had varying types and levels of schizophrenia. And when I first started working there, I was young. I was 25, I think. Sounds
Hmm.
right. Yeah, I was 25. And I had no idea what to expect. Now, schizophrenia is a more um extreme is not the word I mean, but it's when we're talking mental health support and we're talking about schizophrenia, it's a little different than what we're talking about in MindBar. Not
Hmm.
necessarily, a little bit, but
Hmm.
there's a lot of overlap. And I didn't know that when I first started working there, because I heard schizophrenia and I immediately thought everything you see in movies and TV and all these things. And I
Hmm.
did not realize until that my 3 years of working there and I moved on, gosh, there is so much misinformation out there. And it starts with something like schizophrenia that is complicated. It's
Hmm.
complicated. There are varying types, there are varying severities. And I didn't know, because all you hear when you see a movie and someone has schizophrenia is basically that they're a serial killer. And
Yeah.
that's just not reality. The vast
Hmm.
majority of people with schizophrenia are not violent. And that for me was kind of my first indication that, okay, no wonder there's a stigma. It's how
Hmm.
things are portrayed. Now, I also can't totally fault movies and TV because, well, the whole purpose is to dramatize everything. If it
Hmm.
didn't, there would be no entertainment. So, there's a little
Yeah.
like back and forth with that. But to me, just based on my professional experience, my personal experience and interacting with people, I feel like that's where it all starts, this stigma.
Yeah. It's a
But
good
then
point.
right? It's crazy to me. But then, and then use words like crazy, like I use all day long. But, when you are able to sort of take a step back and take the time to understand and
Hmm.
realize mental health really ranges from, like I said,
Hmm.
something very life changing like schizophrenia to something, and I'm going to put the word simple in quotes, because when I say simple, I don't mean like, oh, it's nothing. Simple
Yeah.
things can be huge things. Something as simple in quotes as trying to find the right career. It
Hmm.
seems simple, but it's very complicated. And if you
Yep.
hate your job, for example, that can destroy your life.
Yes.
It absolutely can. I've been there. I know a lot of people who
Yes.
are still there. So I say that just in terms of like looking at the range of mental health and how much support there is out there. And there should not
Mhm.
be any stigma because, you hear people talking all the time about their shrink. And I hate that word. I've always hated that word. I've been to a psychiatrist. I have. I've spent plenty of time seeing psychiatrists. I've seen
Mhm.
counselors. I've seen therapists. I've seen psychologists. I've seen coaches. I've had this experience in life, like we were talking about, and it can change your life.
Yes.
And there just should, I mean, again, I'm sort of going off on a tangent like I told you I would, but the
No, that's
idea
amazing.
is that there just shouldn't be the stigma that there is, because
Mhm.
why don't you want to better yourself? That's what therapy is all about. That's what coaching is
Yes.
all about. That's what all of this mental health support is about. Bettering
Mhm.
yourself so that you can live a happy, fulfilling, wonderful life, so that at the end of your life, you can look back and say, I
Yeah.
took care of myself. I took care of myself in every
Yeah.
way. I took the time to do my, I'm going to word it this way, mental workouts.
Yeah.
Like that's how
Can you
I see it.
imagine can you imagine if every world leader, every person, like, went to therapy? I mean, it would just be like,
This would
I
be a
that's why
different world.
I could preach about it forever because I'm convinced if everybody in the world went to therapy, like, there'd be no war. I mean, I know it probably sounds like, silly saying that, but I
Doesn't
do.
sound
I'm like,
silly to
if
me.
everybody had to work on themselves, like, a little bit every day and, like, had a good coach or therapist and was doing this work, it would just the world would change.
It would
Mhm.
100% would change. It would be a different world. I think you have such an amazing point with that. And I think that
Mhm.
that is what is so important, because ultimately, the way I look at the world, at least, is it's not just about me. Like, yeah, by nature, we're each the center of the universe because this is everything is around us, right?
Yes.
But I think about this all the time, and I say it to my husband a million times a day. It's amazing to me how selfish people are. And it's
Mhm.
very simple because people don't think about the fact that their actions, their everything affects everyone, not just themselves. Something as simple as, making a decision when you're driving and not thinking about the car behind you or the car in front of you or next to you or whatever,
Mhm.
or the pedestrians. And, that to me, that's so often why car accidents happen. And anyway, my point with that is just the fact that while we have to be a little selfish in order to survive,
Mhm.
the world doesn't, even though it physically kind of revolves around me, it really
Mhm.
doesn't, though. I'm one tiny little speck of a person amongst
Yeah.
billions of other people, amongst billions of other stars. I mean, I don't know about you. I'm a big astronomy person. I don't
I
fully
love it.
understand astronomy, so I'm not going to say like I know what I'm talking about, but I'm fascinated with outer space and what's out there. And, with the new telescope and all those new images that came out
Yes.
last week, I'm like, what?
That's wild that you just said that because I was reading an article and listening to a podcast actually about the new James Webb telescope. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like, it's nice to remember that you are just a speck, in the universe when you think you have all these problems. And it was like a moment for me where I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like so stressed about this app launching and building it, making sure everything's perfect. And I want the users to just love it and the classes to be great. And that was a moment where I was like, wow, like I'm not the center of the universe. Like I know it sounds
It's so,
silly to say, but
yes. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you just said that. And that's what,
yeah.
that to me, I mean, it all ties together, because that's what helps me sometimes. I mean, I'll admit I do also look and go, oh, I'm overwhelmed. Oh no. And then my anxiety kicks in. I'm like, okay, I'm
Yes.
this big. Oh, I'm smaller than that. Oh my goodness. And then I'm like, but wait a minute, I'm bigger than that because I have an entire universe inside of me. Oh, great. And then of course I go back and forth of the, oh, so big, so small thing. But
Yeah.
it does help to remember that, like you said. And that to me is a huge component, that's not a word, component, thank you, to, living that great life that we all deserve to live is that realization of what we really are, who we really are, what the world really is. So
Yes.
I think that's really, really, really cool. I have another quick question, and then I want to ask you my fun questions. And it's a really
Yay.
simple one. How can our listeners become MindBar members?
Yeah, great question. So people can go to our website, which is mind-bar.com. And you can sign up there. You can join. The site, the link to get directly to the app is app.mind-bar.com. But for simplicity, you can just go to mind-bar.com. You can follow us on our Instagram or Facebook or any of that stuff and join. But yeah, it's very simple. You just kind of sign up there, and it's very flexible. You can cancel at any time or pause or kind of whatever works with you in your life. But that would be the way to join.
That's awesome. And I just have to say, as a teacher in MindBar and a member, for all you listeners, it's worth it. It's incredible. I just want
I
to put
love
that out
it
there.
so
It
much.
is
I
so
literally
cool.
I just love it. Talking about all the stuff we're talking about, like stress and this, like I can go into Mind Bar and I'm doing it all the time now. Like I do, even though I've seen these classes already, I'm going in and watching, Amanda's video on how to regulate your nervous system. And then if my husband and I need to have a conversation, it's like how to actually step by step have a difficult conversation with your partner. And then it's like, how to kind of like reflect on your past career. It's like there's just something for everybody, and
Yes.
they're short, and it's just I find myself going there all the time.
That's so awesome. I love it. I love it. And okay. Take a breath. I feel like because you and I first connected many, many months ago, and when you first told me about MindBar, my brain was like, what? And in my
Yeah.
mind, I was like, oh, I hope she asked me to be part of this. Oh, I hope she asked me. I want to be part of this. And you did. And I was like, I had tears in my eyes. I hung up the phone. I don't know if you remember our first call. My son
Oh yes.
fell out of his crib at the end of our call.
I do remember that.
And I remember I had to like run out. I was like, I gotta go. And it was
Yeah.
like tears in my eyes right now too, because it was a very emotional day. But I went in there like panicking because he was climbing out of his crib and it was all a whole thing. But I had two different types of tears in my eyes. On the one hand, I was crying because I was like, my son just fell out of his crib. I hope he's okay. But I was like crying and smiling at the same time. And the smile was because of our conversation. And the tears were a combination of happy tears because I was so moved and excited, and also panicking because of my son, who was totally fine because how toddlers are, they're little crazy people, but
Resilient. Yeah, no,
seriously resilient.
the feeling was mutual. I was talking to you and thinking, Kara has to be part of this, because we actually were going to launch with 7 categories, and I got so many messages and emails and DMs from early members and people in the community saying, will you please, please, please have content around pregnancy and postpartum, because I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that. And it was like such an eye opener to me, by far of any other topic, the most requests we got. And I was just
Really?
like, yes. And so the feeling was mutual. I was so excited to connect with you because, speaking of like stigma, like that, infertility, postpartum, all of that is something everybody, at least I've talked to, is dealing with. And so I'm so honored to have you and that category and that type of content on the platform.
I'm so glad. I can't tell you how much fun I had creating those classes. I went
Yay, we want more.
nuts. Oh my God. Oh, there will be more for you. I've had the
Yay.
wheels turning for months. It's such a special opportunity to have to work with you, and to not just, for multiple reasons. One, it's so exciting. I'm a teacher at heart, and I like to teach adults. As anyone who knows me knows, I'm not good at teaching kids. I lose my patience too easily, and I don't know how to manage it. And I'm like, I gotta go. Adults, it's a different story. But, on the one hand, it's that, but it's also been so fun working with you because you're such an energetic person and I'm an energetic person, and it's so often that I run into people who just can't match that energy, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's really exciting to meet someone who can match that energy and be like, yeah, and I'm like, oh my God, she's excited, this is so great. And like, I'm excited and break people's eardrums with my excitement, and I don't want to do that. So let's switch gears for a minute. Have a couple of some different kind of questions for you, and these are questions I like to ask all of my guests. One's a little more serious, the other one's really it can be a combination of serious or silly. I'll let you decide how you want it to be. So I'm going to give you both and you can answer in whichever order you want. The first one's the more serious one, and this is, who are 3 people who have had the most influence or inspiration in your life? They don't have to be people you know, or they can be. It's very flexible.
Ooh, what a good question.
I will let you answer that, then I'll ask you the other one. The other one's a little harder.
That's a great question. So the first one that comes to mind is my mom. Like
Okay.
I am just so obsessed with that woman. We are best friends. We talk all day, every day.
Love
She is like it's kind of ridiculous how much I call her. Like I'll call her every single morning, like when I wake up. And I don't even know why. I'm just like, hey mom, I just want to like say
I
hi.
love
Like it's just,
that.
we talk all the time. And so she's been one of my biggest advocates and advisors and, partners with MindBar because she
Mm-hmm.
is so passionate about this idea. She's so smart. She was a Supreme Court justice in Texas for 20 years. Like
Wow.
she is so smart. And she came from just like nothing. I mean, she worked 3 jobs to pay her way through college, went to some all women's college in South Carolina that nobody's ever heard of, and was like,
Wow.
the only woman on the Supreme Court here in Texas. And she's just awesome. So
That's
like
so incredible.
everything that she says and does, and she'll laugh if she listens to this. She'll be like, hey, I feel like you think I'm an idiot. But like everything she says and does, I'm like, oh my gosh, like whatever my mom says.
Right.
So I would say definitely my mom for sure. And then, there's a lot of like people I don't know personally that inspire me a lot. So that kind of bucket of people come to mind. People like Barbara Corcoran. I watch her every,
Oh,
week
I
on
love
Shark Tank.
her.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
I watch her on Shark Tank and I'm just like, you go, Barbara Corcoran. Like she
Right.
does not take no for an answer.
Nope.
She executes on her ideas. She, is dyslexic. I have learning disabilities too. And she just breaks down every like barrier. And I just
Love
love
it.
her.
So
So I don't know
inspiring.
her. Barbara Corcoran, if you're listening, please reach out to me. So
Please,
I don't,
Barbara.
I love her so much. So
She's
I
great.
don't know her. And then the other two, I mean, I would honestly have to say like, there's 2 more that come to mind. There's my therapist who I was seeing it, forever ago, my first ever therapist, also Barbara,
Mm-hmm.
um, who helped me start MindBar. She was the person that changed my life. I started sending all my friends and family to her. It became a community of people working on themselves. And if not for her changing my life through therapy and like helping me just self-actualize in ways I never knew possible, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have loved there. I wouldn't have started this company. I wouldn't have been so inspired by it. So
Right.
she comes to mind. And then, I mean, not comes to mind. She comes to top of, she's the inspiration, like the muse behind all of this.
That's so incredible.
Um, yeah. And then I guess like kind of the last person, maybe like a 3.5. And this isn't really, this would be, so at my old job before MindBar, talking about breaking the stigma, I was fired.
Mm.
And I remember just being like, because I'm a very hard worker, like
Yeah.
you get it. I work
Mm-hmm.
around the clock. I work very hard. So I remember when I got fired from this job, I was like, what? Like, you must be joking. Like, there was just no way. Like, I
Right.
was like performing at a peak level high. Like, it made no sense to me. But if I didn't get fired from that job, I I never would have started my own company. I would have kept grinding. I would have kept hustling. I would have kept moving up. I wouldn't
Right.
have I wouldn't have had that space and that time and that severance,
Yeah.
to
Well,
like
that's true.
start my own company. So
Right.
that's more influential in like a back way, I guess.
I love that. I think, but that to me is such a great way to look at it, such a great way, and I can kind of relate in a way because I would have never started the hormonal mama if it wasn't for going through infertility, which was
Mm-hmm.
the hardest thing I've ever gone through in my life. I would have never started the hormonal mama if I didn't have a complicated high risk multiple pregnancy and a
Mm-hmm.
miscarriage of 1 baby while still carrying 2. I
Mm-hmm.
would have never started the hormonal mama if I hadn't
Wow.
had a complicated postpartum journey and complicated breastfeeding, pumping, formula feeding, crazy journey. Like, I get it. It's those dark times that sometimes change our lives.
Yeah.
Same thing with my other business, Caribbean Design
Mm-hmm.
Studio, my sewing business. I would have never started that if I hadn't injured my back, if I hadn't
Mm-hmm.
injured my hip, if I hadn't
Yes.
injured my shoulder, if I hadn't, I mean, I'm full of injuries because, I'm me.
Yeah.
So I totally can understand that, it's different things, but I think so often it's those dark times that at the time you're
Yeah.
like, what is happening? And then you look back
Yeah.
and you say, man, I'm so glad that happened because that changed my life.
Yes, one of the biggest questions you'll get asked in therapy is like, okay, what are you making it mean? Like this happened or this is going on. What are you making it mean? It's like, wow, like yeah, for a week or two, I'm going to make it mean that the world is ending.
Right.
But then, at the end of that, it's like, okay, I got fired. Like, what does that mean? What is
Right.
that? Does it mean I'm not, that I'm incapable? Does it mean that I'm not smart? Does it mean that I can't reach my goals? Like, I don't want to make it mean that. That's not what it means,
Yeah.
So I definitely had my 2 week, like, I'm not getting out of bed time. But then it was
Okay.
like, okay, like,
We can all
I'm
relate to that.
capable.
I think
Yeah.
but I think that's so great to turn something around like that, something that felt dark at the time and you turned it into this life-changing thing.
Yeah.
Thing isn't the word, but you know what I
Break the
mean.
stigma, break the stigma. Now
Yes. Damn
people are
it.
like, you've been, now, like, I tell everybody, and they're like, I can see it. They're like, oh, you got fired. I've never been fired. I'm like, yeah, I got fired. Like,
Damn right.
you should
And you're
try
proud
it.
of it.
Yeah. So proud of it.
Exactly. I
So
think
proud of
that's so awesome. I love it. I'm so excited to hear that. Okay. Okay, here we go. This is a more, well, you'll see. Okay. If you could have a dinner party, or if you don't like
Oh.
dinner parties, you want to have drinks, or you want to take a walk, or you want to shuck corn on the front porch. So that was somebody's activity.
Ooh.
It's whatever you want. You don't have to choose. It's just whatever thing you enjoy that's relaxing. If you could have that gathering or soiree, and here's the fun part, and you can invite 3 people, and there's a reason I put people in quotes.
Oh, I'm
They
so
can be
curious.
people, but your 3 don't have to be people. They can be anything you want. They can be characters in a book. They can be cartoons. They can be
Oh.
Muppets. They can be spirits. They can
Muppets.
be concepts. They can be animals. I asked myself this
Wow.
question last year. I always give people an example just so you understand how like open I am about this. I invited my great grandfather, who I never met. I invited a dragonfly because I have a thing about dragonflies. I know that one's weird. I can't remember what my third one was, but
Amazing.
this question, I really leave it very open because
Oh man.
I just think it's more fun when it's kind of like do whatever you want and you can get super creative and have a lot of fun with it, but you don't
Yeah.
have to. I've had people have the same answer as their inspirational people and their dinner party people. I've had people invite characters from books or characters from movies. I've had people invite ghosts. It's whatever you
Wow.
want. So I know that this one's a tough one.
I
That's
know it's such a great question, and I've answered it a million times in other ways, but it's tough because you can go so many different ways with it.
mm-hmm,
Like, of course, there's one dinner party where I'm like, let's bring in Chris Pratt and Chris Hemsworth, and, like,
right.
but then it's like, no, okay, well, we're not going to do that.
Hey, it's
So
any
yeah, there's,
dinner party you want. It's
I
your dinner
know that's it.
party.
There's so many good ideas.
I
I mean,
know.
the one that comes to mind, like, whenever I think about that question, I actually weirdly think about it, like, quite a bit. It's always like, where am I at in my life right now, and what would I
Yes.
get the most out of right now? And so right now, my answer would definitely be like the people I look up to and admire as, like, female entrepreneurs. So I
Mm,
mean, people that come to mind, obviously, like Barbara Corcoran, like I already said, I just adore her.
mm-hmm.
A huge J Lo fan. I just
Oh
watched.
yeah.
I've always thought she was just like the most incredible woman in the world. And
She's
I
pretty
watched her
inspiring.
yeah, I mean, she has literally just paved the way for, like, women in entrepreneurship, and she's broken down every barrier. She now has a huge company where they invest in Latino female entrepreneurs, and, like, she's just wonderful. And
So
so,
awesome.
and yeah, listening to her story, it's like she started off as a dancer, and everybody was like, "You're just a dancer," and she was like, "Well, no, I'm also a singer." No, you're not. You're a dancer. She's like, "No, I'm a singer." And then, "Oh, I'm also an actress." "No, you're not." "Yes, I am."
Mhm.
Like, she's just awesome. And so I love her, and I would just love to, I feel like I'd be very inspired, like, maybe just by osmosis, like,
Yeah.
would channel some of her,
Oh,
like,
I
don't tell
love
me no
it.
energy. So those
Yes.
two for sure. And then I think a third one, I love Payal Kadipia. She's the founder of ClassPass.
Okay.
And I think that I would just learn a lot from her as far as, like, starting a company like ClassPass, like MindBar. Like, I think that I would learn a lot of, like, actual technical questions and, like, how to move forward from her. And I really admire her entrepreneurship. And so those three would be great. I also think they'd like each other, so like a
Yeah.
good vibe.
Oh, that'd be
I
cool.
listen to a lot of How I Built This. I'm, like, obsessed with that podcast. And
Mm-hmm.
another person on there that I was obsessed with, two guys. One is the founder of Zumba, and another one is the founder of 1-800-JUNK. They're so
Oh,
cool. Yeah, this one guy just, like, dropped out of high school, then tried to go to he talked his way into college, even though he didn't go to high school, and then dropped out of college. And then one day was, like, living in his car outside McDonald's and saw a truck, and he was like, I'm gonna, like, start picking up junk. And, like, it's just like these people, like those are the people that inspire me. The people that are like, I don't have these fancy degrees or
Right.
qualifications, but I had an idea and I didn't give up. Like,
Darn
so
right.
yeah, all those people right now at this stage in my life come to mind. But if you ask me that question again in 3 weeks, maybe it'd be totally different. I love the idea of having a Muppet.
I love that you just said that. And I don't mean to like cut you off, but that to
No, I'm
me,
done.
and that's why I love that question, because I think it does depends on the day. So throughout my
Yeah.
podcast, I've only so far had one person that I've interviewed twice. She was my
Mhm.
very first guest. And then we collaborated on a big project, actually, like immediately after our first call a few months back. And she's just incredible. She's a pediatric sleep coach. She
Oh, wow.
also makes her own skincare products focused on pregnant and postpartum bellies. It's
Mhm. Oh,
incredible.
wow.
Stretch marks. She does a lot. She's like a
Amazing.
very ambitious. She's amazing. And she um so I interviewed her twice. I interviewed her as my very first guest ever, and then I interviewed her a few months ago when we worked on this big project together. We created a Mother's Day gift basket, and I made eye pillows and I made lavender roll-on oils. But it was a whole thing. And she was so interesting asking her these same questions, because before we talked, she said something. I think she said she didn't remember what her answers were the first time because it had been over a
Mhm.
year. And then as I asked her the question, she said, "Oh, I remember my answers." And if I remember correctly, her three inspirational people were the same, but her
Mhm.
dinner party, I believe, was different.
Yeah.
And I don't remember now that I'm thinking about it. It was very clear in my head a minute ago. And now it's like, oh, I don't remember. That's just me being very busy and can't keep anything. But that's why I like to ask it, because I hope to interview people more than once on my show. But
Mhm.
even if I don't, it is really interesting when you listen to your episode and then you listen to it again another time, months or even years down the road. And then you think to yourself, huh, would I have these same answers this time? I might be in a different place. And I just think
Mhm.
that's so interesting. I love asking these questions, and they're just so
Yeah,
interesting.
I love that question.
I do too. It's my favorite thing. I used to ask people if they had a nickname. That was my third question, but I gave up on that one because people didn't seem very interested in that. And I thought, okay, I guess I want to. I mean, I like nicknames. I find it interesting. But anyway,
Oh, no.
all right, last question for you. This is the simplest question you will be asked in a very long time. Where can our listeners find you, and where can they find MindBar, learn about MindBar, learn about you and what you do and where this all came from and all of those things? How can people find you?
Yeah. So again, our website, mind-bar.com, our Instagram, which is mind.bar, Facebook, Mind Bar Therapy Studio. Um, so yeah, those will be kind of probably the first three places that come to mind. And people can, if you reach out anywhere on Mind Bar, that's going to come directly to me. So yeah, I'm behind Mind Bar right now. So if you email the support, if you email anything, my email's up there. I'm messaging back on Instagram. So
You
it's
must
kind
be
of one and the
so
same.
tired.
I love
You
it though. It's like, I love when someone reaches out and says anything. I'm like, that's what jazzes me up. Like, that's what makes me feel like this is a good idea when somebody reaches out. So I love it.
That's so awesome. And it's how it should be. I'm so excited, Haley. I'm so
Me
excited
too.
that we're talking, but I'm so excited that MindBar has launched. I remember when I sent over all of my courses to you and I was like, okay, I can take a breath now, because I had just been recovering from surgery and I had a cold and I'd lost my voice. And as I was recording some of my videos, I could like barely speak. And I was like, are you kidding me? I'm recording these and my voice is gone. Finally, I got everything recorded, and then I was in the editing process and I got another cold, except it was worse than the first one. And I
Mm.
couldn't talk at all. And here I am in front of my computer editing, and I'm like, I can't talk. Oh God,
Oh
I'm done
no.
recording. And then, of course, there was one where I'd recorded 9 videos and lost them all, and I had to re-record everything. It was the whole thing.
Oh
That's
man.
just
Well, they're
me.
so good. I'm so
I'm
grateful.
I'm so grateful. Seriously. I am grateful not just for myself, but for everybody in the world, because I believe everybody in the world needs to be a MindBar member and get these amazing courses. Yes, I'm proud of the work I've done, but I am so blown away by all of the teachers, the therapists, the coaches,
Mhm.
everyone that you've brought into MindBar. I'm honored to be among them, because wow, you have found some of the most incredible minds to be a part of this app, this project, and it's huge. So
Oh, thank you.
with that, Haley, I just want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk to me today, to talk about MindBar, this amazing passion that you've brought to life. And on a personal note, I want to thank you for trusting me and believing in me to be a part of this with you.
Oh my God, are you kidding me? Absolutely. Thank you so much for being a part of MindBar and having me on the podcast. And I can't wait for even more classes from you.
Yay! I can't wait to make some. Woo-hoo!